Welcome to The Curious Developer. I'm Jesper from KDAB. You just landed in a mini-series on AI-driven software development, or how does the tools help you in software development? We've seen a lot of different things, and you might have dumped right into this episode because you were Googling or asking your AI for a YouTube series on AI and Visual Studio, or AI and alternative plugins for Qt Creator and AI. And that's fine, but I'll urge you to go back and start from the beginning, because even though we did talk a bit about Qt Creator and Qt in general, most of what we did was very generic towards AI. Welcome again to the show, Jan. It has been a pleasure to have you with me so far. This might be the last episode for you in this mini-series.
Hi Jesper, thanks for having me back this last time.
Jan, you know those meetings where you just walk in, you sit there for an hour, and then you walk out again and ask yourself, why were I in that meeting at all? Did I make any contribution whatsoever to this meeting? That is scary. Some people make a living out of it, definitely not me, but that is slightly how I feel in this episode, because you're going to show me all of the, well, not all, but some of the tools that exist out there for AI-driven software development.
Yeah, showing you and the audience all of the tools, that would be a very tall order. There is much going on in this space. I today want to focus on two tools. One of them is GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code, because this is one of the most commonly used tools. And they recently introduced agent mode that I want to show. And then I want to show another Qt Creator plugin that I found useful in my research for this series. Okay, we'll start off with Visual Studio Code and GitHub Copilot. So you see my screen now, and you will notice that I'm using the same example that we have used throughout this little series. And just as a reminder, and also for folks that just jumped into the video, this is a QML C++ application, a very small one that just will, in the interface, list a few countries by, and you see it here, their name, their flag, and some population numbers that are very likely not at all accurate anymore, or if they have ever been. Okay, so what I would like to do now is that I want to add to this whole display the area that the square kilometers that the different countries have. And for that, we will need a lot of modifications. We will need to change this underlying data struct, but we will also need to change the model. We will need to change the QML side of things. And in order to do that, I will use GitHub Copilot. So I will maybe just type here and say, in this project that shows countries in QML backed by a C++ model. Yeah, well, we can be polite. Please extend the display to also include the size of the countries by square kilometers. Maybe this way. Okay, let's see.
And it is good to be polite, because you never know what the new overlords will look at your previous interactions with them.
Well, I did recently see an article that in an interview, I think that people being polite costs OpenAI, the company, actually quite a lot of money, because there's all of these tokens that need to be processed. So who knows? Yeah, so this has done processing, and I will go through the results in a moment. I do want to first point out that in order to use this, you will need to use agent mode, because agent mode will try to go smartly across your repository, your code checkout, and see which files need modification, what is the context in which this query was made. And now you have already looked at the results here probably, and you see that there is a lot of GitHub Copilot analyzed the usage of this data struct. And we can take a look here. Then it analyzed the usage of my model. This would also be gathering context for the modifications that are to be made to the code base. And then here's some planning available in what needs doing. So first, we would need to add a size field to the data struct. that makes sense. Then we would need to add a role, a new role to the role enum, the size role. And if you have followed with Jesper's video series on on QML, the introduction to QML, you will notice that this is an important point that we need to make, that we extend the model and the role enum in the model. So this is correct so far. Then we need to modify the data function. That is also correct in order to return the data, update role names, and we need to update the QML side of things. And I will now not go through all of the text that was produced here. I just want to point out that here on the left side, you now see a diff of what GitHub Copilot has changed in my repository. And this includes the data struct was changed. We now have the data, the size field. Also, the constructor was updated here. Then we see the modification to the role enum, and we see that nothing else in the header file has been changed. If I go to the C++ side of things, I see modifications that for here we see that we have extended also the size role, but it's also noteworthy that Copilot did apply a few other changes here, and I will not go through all of them. I will say a few words about that later. We do see the correct modification to the role enum, to the role names function here. Yeah, so this would be that part. And then on the QML side of things, we also see that it extended the text element here to also show the size as it's being provided by the model now. And here, so this is maybe an interesting thing to double check. So we're using model.size, and we will need to see that size is also correctly supplied to the model interface. And we notice that here in the role names function, size is the correct role to use. So on a first glance, this modification looks like what you would expect when introducing this, this new field. So Jesper, is that what you would have expected here?
That's truly amazing. I'm glad I still have this talent of sitting nodding in meetings where I add no value, because but see, I just want to try to go out on a limb here and get you into the danger zone now, because what I look at here is that the size is an integer, and is that integer in millions? So is 5,800,000, is that 5.8, or is it 5,800,000? So is it? That's one of those things that in code bases always get you trouble when you just have these pure ints. So I would like to introduce a population size class. Is that possible? Where it possibly has a from 1,000 employee, or not employees, 1,000 people in population name constructor.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Let's see how that one plays out. This is sneaky because we haven't had that part in the conversation before.
You look excited, not scared. That was
Okay, maybe let's first say, before we go there, I want to give you a bit more of an idea of how the interface works here. So this is a diff view. So we can now accept all of these changes individually, and that way you as a developer, you have control of whether a particular change makes sense. And when I tried this out before we started the episode, I also noticed that there will be a lot of, no, not a lot of, but a bit of additional changes that I would not have wanted. So the change as it is now, I would probably not get through code review by my colleagues, because they will complain that I'm unnecessarily reformatting the whole function here and reorganizing it, and that I should do that in a separate comment. So there is some work that I would need to do here as an extension. So yeah, let's say we keep all of these changes. So they are applied now. And yeah, we're done with that part. And so just to make sure that I understand you correctly, so you would want to change the type of size, and you were saying it's an integer, but I think you meant it's a double here. Yep.
Okay, I was talking about the population. That's a double.
That's also double.
Yeah. I was confusing, but still, is that half a person, or is that in millions, or in thousands, or what is it in? I mean, that's where, if this was my code, I would change that into population size with a name constructor saying population size from millions of people, and then it would be super obvious when you look at it, and it would fetch millions of people, or people in total, or whatever, with stuff. I'm sure that that the gods of design would be appreciating that thought.
Okay, then let's try to refactor it in that direction and see how it goes. So refactor the data struct and the code base so that the population member is of a new type. How would you call it? Population size? Size that clearly indicates the unit this number is in, millions, billions, or billions, pick what makes sense. And make sure population is an integer. Then let's see how that goes. So while this is operating, again, you see that it's searching across the code base in order to accumulate information that might be helpful in that refactoring. And this is what this agent mode is about, that you have some planning going on that accumulates information and then tries to act on that by modifying the code base. And there is, I mentioned this in the last episode, there is a standardization ongoing that you can have standardized plugins that provide additional tools that this agent could be using. And now we have some results. Okay, so here it went the very simple route, and I think it's not quite where you would want it to be. So we have extracted now a name type as an integer, and so now we have population size, but this information of whether this is in millions or in billions still is lost. So
right.
Yeah.
And I even like change to line 26. Previous, this was a new field, but clearly, no, next one. So 26 says new field for country size in square kilometers, 2 lines up. And that is gone now. Clearly, it's not new anymore.
It's a new, not new field anymore. Yeah, right. So maybe we'll leave it at that and keep as a result that this can be quite handy in larger refactorings across the code base. But my experience working with this is also that you will always want to review patches, split them up, and keep applying the skill set that you as a developer have and use this tool in order to make you more productive, but not to replace the insights and the abilities and the expectations that you have. Also, in order to see what kind of refactoring I want to apply, I do need to have some understanding of where I want to go with this. But I did, with all of the knowledge I have accumulated over the last years being a developer, I have found this quite useful in a few situations now.
Jan, you know what? Production is always on my back saying your videos are too long. I think this is a good time to cut this for today, and then tomorrow, the viewer's time frame, it'll be in 5 minutes, you on my time frame. Timeline. We will continue with the next episode, and there we'll go into some of the other tools.
All right, then I have a bonus episode then. That's very cool.
Okay, see you in a few minutes, Jan, and to the viewers in a few minutes if you're watching this in the backlog, or tomorrow if you're watching this live.
See you soon.